you're losing the game. And you haven't even realized you're on the board. Life is not some elegant match played between glasses of wine and polite applause. No, your game is being played in silence. In the dark, on a board you barely understand. You make moves without knowing their consequences, shift pieces without strategy, and confuse fear with intention. You keep playing as if this is a performance for others to watch, as if the purpose is to look composed, clever, invincible. But this isn't theater. This is war played quietly, and every careless move costs something real. The cruel irony is that most people don't even know their role in their own game. Are you the pawn, endlessly moving forward because that's all you think you're allowed to do? Are you the queen, darting in every direction, trying to be everywhere, trying to control everything at once? Or are you just the spectator, watching your own life unfold from a safe distance because stepping onto the board terrifies you? But none of those roles are your truth. The truth is simpler, heavier, and far more powerful. You are the king, not because of strength, not because of speed. You are the king because without you, everything ends. Without your center, without your essence, the game collapses. Yet somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You placed your value in the hands of temporary pieces, jobs, status, applause, relationships that come and go like shifting tides. You mistook constant movement for progress, the noise around you for power. And slowly, piece by piece, you began sacrificing your king. Yourself. Here's the truth no one tells you. The king doesn't need to move much to be powerful. The king doesn't chase. The king doesn't panic. The king observes. He knows who he is. He doesn't fight to be seen. His power exists quietly, like a steady heartbeat beneath the chaos of the board. But what happens when the king forgets his own worth? What happens when the center of the board begins to doubt itself? Everything around it unravels. You wake up each day feeling like you have to prove something. To someone, to everyone. You rush into battles that aren't yours, trying to control everything except the only thing that truly matters, your own mind. This is the game you're playing, whether you acknowledge it or not. And the first step isn't to move faster. It's to wake up, to remember who you are, to understand that this board, your life, has always revolved around your ability to protect your king. Because if the king falls, nothing else matters. The game ends. So ask yourself, with brutal honesty, are you protecting your king, or are you slowly sacrificing him in the name of distraction, validation, and fear? Life is a chessboard, but not the polished, romantic kind you see in old films. Not the kind played under golden light with elegant gestures and slow applause. No, your chessboard is uneven, silent, unpredictable. It's a battlefield where every move you make either protects your center or exposes it to attack. And the harsh reality is this: most people move without knowing why. They advance not because it's part of a strategy, but because standing still terrifies them. They've confused chaos with momentum. You see, the real danger isn't losing a piece on the board. It's not failing, not making a wrong turn, not stumbling. The real danger is not knowing what you're defending. When you don't know what's sacred, everything becomes negotiable. Your peace, your time, your values, they all become currency you spend on things that don't matter. And soon enough, you wake up feeling tired, hollow, and confused about why nothing feels meaningful anymore. This is why clarity matters more than power. The best players don't begin by staring at their opponent. They don't waste energy trying to control every piece at once. They begin by understanding their king, their center. They know their limits, their purpose, their position on the board. Because when the king is protected, everything else can be rebuilt. But if the king falls, it's over. Think about how you've been moving. Maybe you've spent years fighting battles that were never truly yours, trying to impress people who didn't matter, trying to be everywhere, achieve everything, prove something you didn't even fully believe. That's not strategy, that's noise. That's the frantic movement of someone who forgot why they started playing in the first place. Strategy begins in silence, in knowing when not to move, in recognizing that not every shining piece is worth protecting, that not every opportunity deserves a yes. Power is not in speed, it's in awareness. It's in the discipline to hold your ground when everything around you tries to pull you away from yourself. And this is the moment where many lose themselves. They chase control. They try to dominate every corner of the board, convinced that success means holding every piece, leading every battle, knowing every answer. But control is an illusion. Real strength doesn't come from holding the entire board. It comes from standing so firmly at your center that the chaos can't move you. So stop trying to play every role at once. You are not the queen, constantly rushing to prove your power. You are not the rook, blindly charging forward in straight lines. You are the king, steady, deliberate, aware. The king wins not through endless movement, but through intentional presence. Look around at your life. Every job, relationship, dream, fear, ambition, they're all pieces on the board. Some are worth defending. Some are just distractions dressed as opportunities. The question isn't how fast you can move. The question is, do you even know which pieces matter to you? Because once you know that, everything changes. You stop chasing everything. You stop trying to please everyone. You play with intention. You move with clarity. You stop being just another piece on the board. You become the player. The king doesn't need to move much to be powerful. That's the truth most people miss. We live in a world that glorifies noise, constant movement, endless ambition, running without rest. But power doesn't live in the storm. It lives in the stillness at its center. The king doesn't prove his worth by how fast he moves. He proves it by the fact that without him, nothing else matters. His presence defines the game itself. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You began chasing applause, validation, approval from voices that don't even echo for long. You thought your strength was measured by how much you could do, how much you could carry, how loud your victories could sound. But that was never the point. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to control everything. You only have to know who you are and protect it with everything you have. That we've built a culture that teaches people to shine on the outside while slowly crumbling inside. We build castles out of achievements, but leave the foundation, our center, unguarded. And then we wonder why the applause feels hollow, why the victories don't satisfy, why the game feels like it's slipping away. It's because we're protecting everything except the king. Your job, your image, your reputation, those are just pieces. They can be taken, they can fall, they can be replaced. But your inner peace, your values, your purpose, that's your king. That's the one piece that can't fall. And yet, most people spend their lives defending everything else while leaving their king wide open. So ask yourself, what are you really defending? Is it the core of who you are, or the mask you've built to be accepted? Are you protecting your peace of mind, or performing for people who won't remember your name in a year? Every time you betray yourself to fit in, you move your king into check. Every time you prioritize what others think over what you truly feel, you leave your soul undefended. Every time you pretend instead of feel, you sacrifice a piece that you might never get back. True strength isn't in how loudly you roar. It's in the silence that can't be shaken. It's in the clarity that doesn't need to beg to be seen. The king's power isn't in his speed or reach. It's in his gravity. Everything on the board orbits around him, just like your life orbits around the strength of your inner world. So stop running. Stop proving. Stop chasing. Power is not out there in the noise. It's in here, in the quiet place you've been ignoring. If your king stands strong, it doesn't matter how many pieces fall. You can rebuild. But if your king collapses, nothing you've built will stand. This is why the king matters. Because without him, the game ends. And without you, the real you, the center you've neglected, every victory becomes meaningless decoration on an empty board. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one standing in front of you. It's the one you've already let inside. It's the voice that whispers when the world goes quiet. The one that tells you you're not ready, that it's safer to stay small, that it's better to follow than to lead. That's the voice that's been pulling your strings for years. And the worst part is, it doesn't scream. It whispers. It blends in with your thoughts until you can't tell the difference between your fear and your truth, that you've carried this enemy within you. Your doubts, your wounds, your unfinished battles, and you've mistaken it for who you are. But here's the truth. You are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. And if you can hear it, you can change it. That's where the real battle takes place. Not out there on the board, not in the faces of your critics or the weight of the world. The real battle is inside your mind, between the clarity of your purpose and the noise of your fears. You keep trying to conquer the world without conquering your own thoughts first. You try to control every move on the board while your king is drowning in silence, unprotected, forgotten. That's why the victories feel empty. That's why every step forward seems to bring you closer to nowhere. Because no external move will matter until you win the war inside. Leadership doesn't begin when others follow you. It begins the moment you lead yourself. When you stop listening to fear as if it's the truth. When you stop giving your insecurities the throne. Real power isn't in domination. It's in self-mastery. That inner saboteur thrives on your silence. It grows stronger every time you avoid your reflection, every time you drown yourself in distraction, every time you run instead of facing what hurts. But here's the thing about shadows. They only survive in the dark. The moment you turn the light toward them, they lose their power. The moment you name your fears, you stop being controlled by them. So sit with yourself. No noise, no mask, no performance. Face the voice. Listen to it. Not to obey it, but to finally understand it. Because once you understand it, it no longer controls the board. The greatest victory is not defeating someone else. It's reclaiming the throne in your own mind. It's silencing the chaos until your thoughts move with intention again. It's standing in the middle of the storm and knowing, truly knowing, that the storm cannot move you. Remember this. The king doesn't panic when the board shakes. He stays still, anchored. He knows the board moves around him, not through him. The same goes for you. Your mind is the true battlefield. Win there, and the outside world becomes a board you can finally command. Most people think power means control. Control over the board, over others, over circumstances. They believe that to win, they need to dominate every square, anticipate every threat, hold everything in their hands. But control is fragile. It's a mask that cracks the moment reality stops obeying your plan. True power doesn't come from gripping tighter. It comes from letting go of what was never yours to control. It's not about owning the board. It's about knowing your center so well that no storm can uproot you. Power isn't about control. It's about clarity. Look at the king. He doesn't race across the board. He doesn't chase pieces. He waits, observes. He knows exactly who he is, what matters, and what doesn't. That is why a single step from the king carries more weight than the frantic running of every other piece. His power isn't in how many moves he makes. It's in the meaning behind each one. That's what clarity does. It simplifies the chaos. It tells you, this matters, this doesn't. This is worth defending, this isn't. It removes the noise that keeps you spinning, chasing, exhausting yourself over battles that were never truly yours. Think of all the energy you've wasted trying to control things outside of you. People's opinions, outcomes you can't predict, futures you can't force. Every ounce of that energy is power leaking away from your center. The king doesn't play like that. The king doesn't beg the board to obey. He anchors himself, and the board bends around his clarity. Clarity is not arrogance. It's not about pretending you know everything. It's the opposite. It's the humility to know exactly what you stand for and the wisdom to ignore what isn't essential. Clarity whispers when the world shouts. It stands still when everyone else runs. And in a world that feeds on confusion, a clear mind becomes a weapon. This is why the king can be surrounded and still play with purpose. Because his power was never in the number of pieces he controlled, it was in his ability to move with intention, even in silence. Even when the board looks hopeless, stop trying to control everything. You don't need to know every answer. You don't need to fix every problem. You just need to know your truth. And once you do, the weight of the world starts to lose its grip. Real strength isn't loud. It's calm. It's the quiet certainty of someone who doesn't need to shout to be heard. It's the king standing tall in the center of the board, unshaken, unmoved, untouched by chaos. And when you reach that place, when your clarity becomes stronger than your need for control, the game stops owning you. You begin to own yourself. There's a price to playing the game without purpose, and it's higher than most people ever realize. It's not just lost time. It's not just wasted energy. It's something deeper, quieter, far more dangerous. It's the slow erosion of who you are. When you don't know what you're protecting, everything becomes urgent. Every voice seems important. Every opportunity seems necessary. You scatter your energy across the board, trying to hold it all together. And in the process, you lose the one thing that matters most. You're centered. That's how people break without ever noticing. Not in a single explosion, but in 1,000 small surrenders. A yes when you wanted to say no. A compromise you told yourself was temporary. A silence you justified as wisdom when it was really fear. Bit by bit, you give away the core of your power, convincing yourself it's just for now. And then one day, you wake up, and the board is full of noise, but your king is nowhere to be found. This is the cost of playing without purpose. You become reactive instead of intentional. You let the world move you like a piece, instead of standing as the one who moves with choice. And here's the bitter truth. The board doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're confused. If you don't decide what matters, the world will decide for you. Look at how easily noise disguises itself as meaning. The endless chase for status, the hunger for approval, the race to stay relevant. You convince yourself you're winning because you're moving fast. But fast isn't victory. Fast is just motion. And motion without direction is the quietest way to lose everything. Have you noticed how hollow it feels? That subtle emptiness after a win that doesn't feed your soul? That dull silence after the applause fades. That's your king, standing alone, wondering when you'll remember what you were supposed to be defending. A life without purpose doesn't collapse all at once. It decays slowly. First, your values blur. Then your boundaries weaken. Then your voice gets quiet. And eventually, your reflection stops looking like you. That's the moment most people call burnout. But it isn't burnout, it's spiritual drift. It's the slow death of direction. Take a long look at your board. What's driving you? Is it clarity or fear of falling behind? Are you moving towards something real, or are you just moving because everyone else is? Purpose is not a luxury. It's the anchor that keeps your king standing. Without it, every victory turns to dust. Every achievement becomes a placeholder. And no matter how many pieces you collect, the board will feel empty, because the king without a reason to stand eventually falls. If you don't fill your life with purpose, the world will fill it with noise. That's the quiet truth most people run from. Because noise is easy. It's everywhere. It drowns out the questions that demand courage. But purpose is different. Purpose requires you to turn inward, to confront yourself, to strip away everything that doesn't belong. And that takes strength. Reclaiming your center isn't a grand gesture. It's not a war cry. It begins in silence. It begins in a single breath. It begins the moment you decide to stop running, to stand still, to say, no more. Reclaiming your center means naming what truly matters. Not what looks good, not what wins applause, not what earns approval. What truly matters to you. The values you will not trade. The peace you refuse to sell. The principles you will defend even when no one claps. That is your center. That is your king. And once you remember it, everything else begins to shift. You start seeing the board clearly again. You stop trying to hold everything. You stop chasing every piece that moves. You learn to let some fall. You understand that not everything shining is meant to be saved. Because clarity gives you the courage to lose what's not essential and protect what is. This is how real power is built. Quietly, brick by brick, decision by decision, not by shouting louder, but by standing taller in your silence. Not by proving to others who you are, but by never forgetting it yourself. Think about what happens when you finally guard your center. Distractions lose their grip. Empty praise loses its weight. Approval stops being oxygen. You move, not because you're being pulled, but because you've chosen to. And that difference changes everything. Protecting your king isn't selfish. It's strategy. Because if you fall, everything else falls with you. Your energy, your vision, your capacity to love, to lead, to live with intention, they all depend on that center staying strong. You can rebuild lost pieces, but you cannot rebuild a king you've abandoned. This game, your life, was never about winning every battle. It was never about controlling every outcome. It was about one thing, not losing yourself. Because the truth is, victories fade, applause dies, status crumbles. But the one thing that remains, if you choose it, is your center. People talk about strength as if it's about being unbreakable. But real strength is knowing your weaknesses and defending them wisely. It's acknowledging your shadows without letting them lead you. It's standing still when the world demands that you run with them. Do you see it now? The king isn't the loudest. He isn't the flashiest. He isn't the one making the most moves. He's the one who endures, the one who holds, the one who survives the noise without betraying his core. That's why real leadership doesn't begin when you control others. It begins the moment you refuse to be controlled by your fears. It begins the moment you decide that your peace is not for sale. And here's the final truth, the one most never learn until it's too late. If you don't protect your king, no one else will. No one else will fight for your center the way you must. No one else will care for your soul with the urgency it deserves. The board belongs to you, and so does the responsibility to defend it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start with one decision, one boundary, one breath. Start now. This isn't about being invincible. This is about remembering your worth. This is about clarity over noise, purpose over panic, intention over reflex. This is about looking the world in the eye and saying, I know who I am, and I will not move without meaning. So let them play their game in a storm of distractions. You'll play yours in silence, with strategy, with power, with purpose. Remember this, when the king stands, the game is never lost. Even when everything else falls, you can rebuild. Because you remained, because you endured, because you never surrendered the one piece that mattered most. So, protect your king, protect your mind, protect your values, protect your purpose. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's clarity. That's power. And when you step forward with that kind of certainty, the world doesn't decide your moves anymore. You do.